welcome. I would like to start by acknowledging that I live and work within the traditional territories of the Kwanlin First Nation and the Tonquaton Council. For those of you who haven't met me yet, I'm Brianne Warner, the new Executive Director of the Yukon Chamber of Mines. And I'd like to take this opportunity to quickly introduce you to the new 2022 Yukon Chamber of Mines Board of Directors. We have a new president this year, Laura Lee Johnstone with Minto Meadows. We have Vice President Andrew Karn with ATEC Resources. Our second president is Alan Nixon with BMC Minerals. Our past president, Ed Pert with Air North. Director Mike Burke, Geological Services. Director Tracy Dormer, Minto Metals. Director Brandon McDonald, Fireweed Zinc. Director Stuart Murray, Smalls Expediting. Director Jerry Ass, Grey Wolf Solutions. And Director Christian Rowland with Newmont. Now, the decision to cancel this year's geoscience was a difficult one and not taken lightly, as it financially hurt the chamber. Months of planning and prep have been slow to unravel, and we truly appreciate all the support our members have given us, both in financial contributions and donations of their time. The last two seasons have been operationally challenging, which is why celebrating our project success is so important. It is extremely important to the chamber to ensure we continue to offer opportunities for industry to network and communicate their achievements and attract investments to our territory. With the decision being made primarily due to imposed restrictions on gatherings, the idea of a Zoom speaker series was developed as a way to deliver on all of these commitments. If there is enough interest, we will look at continuing to offer this type of series in the future. Also, please check out our silent auction, Northern Safety Network Yukon, along with Yukon Chamber of Mines and Yukon Reed Society, are once again working together to organize the fundraising auction to raise money for the Yukon Imagination Library and the Yukon Mines Legacy Foundation. Normally, the silent auction takes place at the Geoscience Awards banquet, but this year the auction will be live online. All proceeds of the silent auction will go to the Yukon Imagination Library and the Yukon Mines Legacy Foundation, and the auction will end on January 27th at 12 p.m. Yukon time. If you are experiencing any technical issues, please contact events@csrmanagement.ca. And please ensure your mic is muted until Q&A at the end of the session, where you can type your questions into the chat and the moderator will ensure they are answered. And with that, I will hand the mic over to our president, Laura Lee, for our welcome message.
Morning, everyone. I just wanted to take the opportunity to say hello in person before I go off camera. Hopefully that will give you better sound quality. So good morning, all. On behalf of the Yukon Chamber of Mines and the Board of Directors, I'm pleased to welcome colleagues both locally and nationally to take part in our very first Geoscience Speaker Series. In partnership with dedicated sponsors BMC Minerals and Archer Cathro, we're excited to offer the technical portion of our 2021 49th Annual Yukon Geoscience Agenda free of charge via Zoom. The Yukon Geoscience Speaker Series is an opportunity to share the success of our exploration and mining industry from this past season while keeping up to date on trends and industry best practices. The Geoscience Speaker Series is the agenda focuses on technical talks, and attendees are encouraged to ask questions at the end of the session in our Q&A. This year's talks include technical updates on the wide variety of mineral types and commodities being explored for Yukon, provided by our hardworking industry colleagues. The success of Geoscience Forum has long been rooted in the strength of the technical program. Results of recent mapping and research conducted by the Yukon Geological Survey and exploration success by other geoscientists will be presented along with panel discussions, including Yukon's EMR Minister, John Streicker, and Yukon's Economic Development Minister, Ranj Play. In line with geoscience tradition, we've included an online auction fundraiser, as Brianne had previously mentioned, Yukon Imagination Library and Mine Legacy Foundation. The link's provided along with the Zoom link for the series, and I see that Anne also shared it in the chat. Please have a look at that. I'd like to take this opportunity on behalf of the Board of Directors of the Yukon Chamber of Mines to thank our sponsors, speakers, and organizers for allowing us to deliver on our technical agenda and salvaging a large portion of what was lost through the cancellation of this past year's geoscience. Through your support, the Yukon Chamber of Mines will continue to strengthen its voice as a representative of Yukon's modern, responsible mining industry. We sincerely look forward to being able to deliver these talks in person at the next year's 50th annual Yukon Geoscience Forum and Trade Show. Thank you again, and I hope you find this year's Geoscience speaker series both engaging and informative. With that, I'd like to introduce our next speaker, the Honorable Mr. Streicker.
Thanks very much, Laura Lee and Brianne. Morning, everybody. And I'd like to, if you're not from the Yukon, I'd like to welcome you to the Yukon and to our Geoscience Speaker Series. And I'm sure you're aware the speaker series was organized as an alternative platform to share information with Yukon's mining and exploration community after the forum was canceled due to the pandemic, as Laura Lee has mentioned. And for me, I'm talking to you as Laura Lee and Brianne are from the traditional territory of the Kwanlundan First Nation and the Tonquitchin Council. But for what I'd like to do is to welcome you to the Yukon if you're not from the Yukon. This speaker series was planned for the forum, and I would just like to give a big shout out to the Chamber for pivoting so quickly to organize this event after the disappointment of having to cancel the forum 2 months ago. I'd also like to just say that I think that the Chamber has been doing a fantastic job over the past, well, many years, but these last 2 years have been tough, and I want to say thanks to them. I'd like to thank Ed Peart as the outgoing president, and also Samson Hartland as the outgoing executive director. And I'd like to welcome Brianne and Laura Lee stepping in as the new president. So thank you, Laura Lee. Over the next 3 weeks, you'll have an opportunity to hear updates on the state of both hard rock and placer exploration and mining in the territory, as well as presentations on many of the active exploration projects currently underway here in the Yukon. You'll hear about exploration for critical minerals and precious metals, and you'll learn about some of the work that our team at the Geological Survey have been doing to support your exploration efforts and reduce investment risk. And on the final day of the series, we'll feature a panel discussion on work underway to improve the alignment of the regulatory processes in the Yukon, as well as a presentation on how health surveillance is becoming an integral part of our workplace as a result of the pandemic. And the series will close with a fireside chat between my colleague, the Honorable Ranj Pillay, Minister of Economic Development, and the Yukon Development Corporation, and Laura Lee, the Chamber Mines President. What you'll learn from the presentations is that our territory continues to be a great place for mineral investment. Explorers, contractors, and suppliers have proven their ability to adapt to the pandemic, adjusting workplace protocols as circumstances change to keep workers safe. And they've done a really great job over these past couple of years, and well, it's evidenced by the numbers. We've seen an increase in the level of exploration spending from 2020 as a result of the safety measures you have implemented. And I'm also happy to report that mineral production at the Yukon's 3 hard rock mines reached 500 million this past year in 2021. And that's the 3rd highest level in the Yukon's history. Placer production was at its 2nd highest value in recorded history. Of course, price of gold helps, but it was over 139 million. We're not able to meet in person to celebrate these accomplishments, so I'd like to say congratulations to all Yukon miners and the industry who've worked so hard to keep our economy going. Safely, by the way. I look forward to being able to shake your hands, or maybe at least seeing everybody in person, hopefully soon. The future of the industry continues to be bright for the Yukon. And our government is committed to working with all stakeholders to find a balance and a path forward. We're listening to Yukoners and responding to growing concerns about climate change and strengthening collaborations and meaningful consultation with Yukon First Nations. New mining legislation is being developed now to improve our regulatory system and strengthen the Yukon's economy while respecting environmental stewardship and First Nations special relationships with the land. As I've said to industry folks and certainly worked with the Chamber, the future of mining is around making sure that we move into the future on these fronts. The new legislation will create more certainty for investors and help to streamline the assessment process and regulatory regime. It will also provide socioeconomic benefits to Yukon communities, respect First Nations rights and interests, and reflect the values of Yukoners. We are committed to sharing investment risk with you through the Yukon Mineral Exploration Program. This year, our $1.4 million leveraged $4.3 million in exploration spending that helped to sustain many of the Yukon businesses that support the mineral sector. Finally, we continue to invest in geoscience, as we know that this data and knowledge helps to inform your exploration activities and helps reduce exploration risk. All of this bodes well for the continuing development of the Yukon's mineral sector and industry, critical to our success as a territory. And as we transition to a low carbon future. I'd like to thank you all for tuning in today. I hope you have a great series and an excellent week ahead of you, and that you have a successful 2022. Thanks, Laura Lee and Brianne.
Thank you, Minister Streicker. Now I would like to introduce Scott Casselman, Head of Minerals Geology with Yukon Geological Survey on his topic, Yukon Exploration and Mining Overview for 2021.
Thank you, Brianne, and thanks to the Chamber for organizing the speaker series. And I've got a lot of material to go through, so I'm going to jump right into it. Firstly, as you all know, the pandemic continued to affect work in the territory. However, mining companies, exploration companies, contractors, and suppliers were able to adapt and implement measures to ensure the safety of their workers, thus allowing the 2021 season to rebound from the lows of 2020. And it approached much more normal levels, as the minister just mentioned. And our 3 operating mines were able to adapt as well. And production at Alexco's Keno operations and Victoria Gold's Eagle Gold Mine continued to ramp up to full production levels. The industry did experience a significant shortage of workers, and this is something we observed in a lot of the exploration projects that I went out to visit this year, particularly related to diamond drillers and underground miners. And as well, companies have continued to experience a delay in analytical results, and you will see some of that as I go through the presentation. There are some projects that are still waiting on results. I'll now jump into exploration and production statistics. So exploration numbers this year, sorry, I'm just going to move my view of people. So we are at 113 million is our estimate for year-end exploration expenditures. About $72 million were spent on development activities, and that's the completion of the development work at Eagle primarily, but also the development work at Keno Hill, and we attributed the 3 hard rock mines to be approximately $5 million this year. So that's a total contribution of about $685 million to the Yukon's GDP. Exploration expenditures by commodity. So again, as is typical, the majority of exploration activity is focused on gold. 59% of those exploration dollars went to gold. That's followed by about 16% or 18 million on silver and 15%, 6 million on copper, followed by zinc and lead projects that represent about 8.5%. We had a couple of nickel exploration projects representing 1.3, and then a few tin projects for a small amount of dollars. Claim staking activity in 2021, there were 3,928 claims staked throughout the year, and that's up slightly from 2020 numbers. And at the end of the year, claims in good standing was 173,057, and that is up from the 2020 numbers. The distribution of the claims staked, the Mayo district saw the greater number of claims this year with 2,548 claims staked in the Mayo region, and you can actually see the dots of where those claims were staked on this map. I don't show all of the existing claims, just the new claims staked. Dawson region Whitehorse region followed Mayo with 854 claims being staked, and then 490 claims staked in the Dawson region. There were no claims staked in the Watson Lake District this year. The mineral exploration program funding, as the minister mentioned, $1.4 million was contributed from the territorial government, and we also got $80,000 from the CanNor, the federal government program CanNor. So that helped to fund another couple of programs this year. That funding leveraged $4.8 million in exploration, and it went to 53 projects, 21 placer, 1 grassroots hard rock, 11 focused regional hard rock, and 20 target evaluation hard rock projects. And you can see their distribution on the map here. We'll now look at mine production in the territory, starting with Victoria Gold's Eagle Gold Mine. Eagle, of course, is an intrusive hosted gold deposit. They have reserves at the start of mining of 3.3 million ounces, and that's within a mineral resource of 5.3 million ounces. They have achieved commercial production on July 1st of 2020. And in 2021, they produced 164,222 ounces. You can see the graph on the bottom that shows the ramp up in production through 2020. They shut down for a short period over the winter, so Q1 2021 numbers were lower, but they continue to ramp up through 2021. They were affected in Q4 by supply constraints, as most industries are. They had troubles getting drip emitters. I think that has been resolved, so hopefully they'll get back on track to ramping up their production to their expected goals. Victoria Gold also did a significant exploration program. They explored their Raven, Lynx, and Rex Peso targets. They had planned 15,000 meters of diamond drilling. I don't know where they actually ended up after the season, nor the number of holes, but they were very busy. At Raven, they were doing step-out drilling, testing over 1 kilometer of the prospective high-grade gold trend. At Lynx, they did a systematic surface trenching program, geological mapping and sampling to define anomalous gold mineralized trend there. And at Rex and Peso, their diamond drilling was targeting high-grade silver veins. And the results from that are pending. Minto Metals Corp, a new company, they were formed this year from the merger or reorganization of Minto Exploration, Pembridge, and private investors. So they now operate as Minto Metals Corp. The company completed an exploration program of 13,220 meters of diamond drilling this year. We'll now look at Alexico Resources Keno Hill. Mining resumed at the site on November 24th of last year, 2020. In May, the company announced an updated mineral resource estimate for Belkino, Lucky Queen, Flame and Moth, and Birmingham, and those numbers are listed here. 1.4 million tons at 804 grams per ton silver, 2.5% lead, and 3.8% zinc, and 0.31 grams per ton gold. Ore production from the Belkino mine was completed this year, and they have redeployed the assets from that to Birmingham and Flame and Moth. Production at Birmingham commenced this summer. Throughput there is 17 tons per hour or 400 tons per day, and the concentrate grade is in excess of 18,000 grams per silver. Flame and Moth development work is ongoing, and they should be producing from there, I think, within Q1 of this year. They also did a significant exploration program focused primarily at the Birmingham Northeast Deep, where they drilled 17,830 meters and 51 holes. The drilling confirmed the presence of a subhorizontal mineralized zone that measures 500 meters long by 100 meters in vertical extent. You can see that illustrated on the map here in the dotted area. And the company is working on a revised resource estimate for that region. A few of the selected highlights from that program here, they have many drill intercepts listed on their website, but I just grabbed a few. You can see 1,681 grams per ton silver over 20 meters, 2,901 over 4.4, 1,383 over 11, 1,358 over 7.85 meters, and then 3,226 grams over 4.16. So I expect that their resource, once completed, will significantly increase the potential at Birmingham. We'll now move on to projects that are in the permitting and development stage. Starting with BMC Minerals Cudzakaya project. Of course, Cudzakaya hosts the ABM and Krakatoa deposits with measured, indicated, and inferred resources, as you see listed here, nearly 20 million tons of 6.35% zinc, 1.9% lead, 0.93% copper, 148 grams per ton silver, and 1.39 grams per ton gold. YCM issued the final screening report for the project on October 21st of 2020. The positive recommendation listed 30 mitigation measures and 6 monitoring measures. And the decision bodies, which are the territorial government and federal government, have been engaging in discussions on these terms and conditions of the recommendations with the Casca First Nation. In November of 2020, the company completed their feasibility study, which indicated a pre-development capital cost of $376 million, a net present value of 617, an after-tax internal rate of return of 45.9%. Cash cost of production based on silver alone was $22.13 per ounce. And they, at that time, targeted first production for late in 2023. With a reserve life of 9 years. So hopefully that project can continue to progress and we'll see some development work happening there shortly. Coffee Mine project of Newmont Corporation, resource there is 62.3 million tons at a grade of 1.19 grams per ton gold for a total of 2.37 million ounces gold, sorry. YCM issued the screening report for that project on October 12th. And that report recommends that the project proceed subject to 48 mitigative measures and 10 monitoring measures. We'll now look at Western Copper's Casino project. In May, the company announced a strategic investment by Rio Tinto Canada Incorporation of $25.6 million. The 2021 program focused on metallurgical and geotechnical drilling, resource confirmation drilling, exploration drilling outside of the deposit area, soil sampling, and robotic scanning of core, both historic and current core, using the Enersoft geologic AI system. And that image on the bottom left is that core scanning process. I was there and saw it operating, and it was very impressive. It might create unemployment for some geologists, although maybe they'll just change to a more technical line of work. The company is working on an updated feasibility study, which they expect to be completed in Q2 of this year. And at Brewery Creek, Golden Predator Mining Corp and Arizona Gold Mines merged to form Sabre Gold Mines in the fall of 2021. Sabre now operates the project, and they completed an updated mineral resource estimate shortly after the merger was complete. Those numbers are, as you see, listed here. So the leachable resource is approximately 800,000 ounces of gold, and the sulfide resource is approximately 800,000 as well. The company is working on an updated economic study for that deposit. We'll now move on to exploration activities throughout the territory, starting with gold projects. 42 gold projects, exploration projects we are tracking represent $66.7 million in expenditures. You can see their distribution throughout the territory. I won't be able to talk about them all, but I'll try to hit as many as I can. Starting with Banyan Gold at their Ormac project, it was one of the most active purely exploration projects in the territory this year. They started early and they finished very late. I think they completed their exploration program roughly mid-December of last year, and they'll be starting up again fairly soon. During the year, they drilled over 30,000 meters in 135 holes. The main focus there was the power line target, although they did drill 17 holes for 4,200 meters in Orex Hill. They also constructed a new camp located just a short distance up the road, closer towards Keno, 49-person camp, so they'll be well set up for their program when they start this year. Once again, the resource at Ormac in both the airstrip and power line deposits is just under 1 million ounces of gold. And that those are both inferred. The new drilling at power line, I think, based on some of the numbers we're going to see here, should increase that resource. So a few of their numbers, they also have a long list of assay results on their website, but a couple of the highlights are 1.73 grams per ton gold over 72 meters in hole 139, 1.06 grams over 21 meters, 1.03 over 81 meters, a 0.74 over 144 meters, and a 0.73 over 5.6. As well, at Oryx Hill, where they don't currently have any resource estimates, they were getting some very significant comparable intercepts. They have a 0.81 over 17 meters in hole 116, a 0.66 over 13.8 meters, 0.59 over 13.7, and a 0.54 grams per ton gold over 41.2 meters. They also work their Nitra property, which is located 20 kilometers to the southwest of Ormac, where they collected over 6,000 soil samples. It's a similar target, intrusive hosted gold, I believe is what they're looking for there. Haven't seen the results from that soil sampling survey, but I encourage you to check out their website through the winter to see how that looks. Moving to Southern Yukon, Whitehorse Gold Corp was active again at Skookum Gold Project. Resource estimate for Skookum Gold listed there. It's from 2020, just under 500,000 ounces of gold and over 7 million ounces of silver. Their 2021 exploration program involved an airborne geophysical survey, geological mapping, and 16,400 meters of drilling in 46 holes. A couple of their highlights from the Rainbow Zone at Skookum Creek deposit. They had 4.3 grams per ton gold, 279.9 grams per ton silver over 5.5 meters, 2.5 grams gold, 431.8 grams silver over 6.17, and 27.1 grams per ton gold, 346 grams per ton silver over 4.24. Snowline Gold Corp, relatively a new company operating in the territory. They worked various projects you see listed on the small map to the right, the Ursa, Einarson, Rogue, and Rainbow, all located in central eastern Yukon. The main project was at Einarson, where they did soil sampling, prospecting, drone photography, mapping, trenching, and drilled 4,300 meters in 21 holes. All of these images are from Einarson. Sample of the drill core, a section, and a little bit of the visible gold from one of their holes. At Ursa, they did a VTEM survey, prospecting and soil sampling. At Rogue, soil sampling, prospecting, mapping, drone photography, a magnetic survey, and drilled 4 holes. And at Rainbow, some drone imagery. Highlights from their drilling at the Jupiter Zone at Einarson. They got 13.7 grams per ton gold over 3.6 meters in hole 15, 13.9 over 6 in hole 12, multiple intercepts in holes 10, 11, and 13. In 10, they got 5.15 over 5.5 meters, as well as a 3.45 over 13, and a 4.01 grams per ton gold over 9.5. In hole 11, they got a 5.35 over 12.5, 13.21 over 6.5, and then in hole 13, 2.59 over 27, nice long intercept there, and a 4.02 over 10.6. As well, in a couple of holes outside of this section, hole 7 had 4.1 grams per ton gold over 4 meters, and hole 6 had 3.96 over 7. We'll now move over to the Florin project of St. James Gold. St. James optioned that project from the previous owner, and that project was previously known as Red Mountain. They've rebranded it as Florin. It's an intrusion-related gold target, Cretaceous Mayo-Sweet intrusions, very similar to the Eagle Mine. In 2021, they updated the resource estimate with the new numbers you see here, 171 million tons of 0.45 grams per ton gold for a total of 2.474 million ounces of gold. They drilled 15 holes for 3,613 meters, and results from that drilling are pending. A short distance away, also in the Clear Creek area, Sitka Gold was active at their RC project. It also is an intrusion-related gold system in Cretaceous Mayo-Sweet intrusions. They drilled 5,000 meters in 15 holes and observed abundant visible gold in hole 21-021. And here you see the selected highlights from their drill program. So hole 21-021 intersected 1.17 grams per ton gold over 220 meters. They also got 0.45 grams over 213 meters in hole 13, 0.45 over 318 meters in hole 7, 0.41 over 354 in hole 9, and a 0.4 over 402 meters in hole 10. And I just saw they announced in a press release that they will be starting drilling on that project very shortly. They're going to get an early start this year. Now move over to the Dawson area. Klondike Gold Corp was active again this year on their Klondike District project, just south of Dawson. The map on the left shows their drilling in the Lone Star zone, and the section to the bottom right shows the continuity of some of their intercepts there. They drilled more than 45 holes for over 8,000 meters. Drilling was at the Lone Star, Stander, Lindo, and Virgin targets. Some Lone Star drilling highlights are 3.23 grams over 6 meters, 2.9 over 11 meters, 1.7 grams per ton gold over 14.6, a 1.08 over 40.35 meters. Flow Metals was active in the 60-mile region, just west of Dawson. Their 2021 program, they drilled 15 RAB holes. You can see their 2021 holes are shown on this section. The gold at the bottom right is from placer operations on the 60-mile. And highlights from flows drilling this year are 0.38 grams per ton gold over 22 meters in hole 9, a 0.35 grams per ton gold over 25 meters in hole 11, and a 0.45 over 33.5 meters in hole 12. A little bit south of the 60-mile, Golden Sky Minerals was working the hotspot property. Their program consisted of the maiden drill program of 4 holes for 1,317 meters. And they observed hydrothermal breccia with quartz veining and up to 10% pyrite in rhyolitic volcanic rocks. The core here is an example of that from hole 21-02. And they have results back for 2102, and for a maiden drill program on a relatively unexplored property, they have 0.85 grams per ton gold over 102 meters. The results from the other holes are still pending, so not a bad start to the drilling program on that project. Golden Sky also worked their Bullseye property a little further to the south near Wellesley Lake. They drilled 5 RC holes for 384 meters, and each of those holes intercepted gold. 0.43 over 33.53 in hole 1, 0.8 over 44 meters in hole 2, 1.13 over 12 meters in hole 3, 1.03 over 80.77 in hole 4, and a 0.32 over 89 in hole 5. White Gold, very busy in the Dawson region again this year. They worked multiple properties. At Nolan, they drilled 1,200 meters. At Bonanza, they did structural mapping, GT probe, IP, and RAB drilling. At the VG deposit, they updated the mineral resource there. The new numbers are 5.26 million tons at a grade of 1.62 grams per ton gold for a total of 267,000 ounces of gold. White Gold primarily focused on the Ryan Surprise and Uli's Ridge area, where they drilled eight diamond drill holes for 2,651 meters and 10 RAB holes at Uli's Ridge. And then at Betty, they drilled 6 diamond drill holes for 1,364 meters, and they also did a structural geological interpretation. Highlights from some of that work this year at the Betty Ford target on the Betty property. Betty Ford is on the map there in the very center. A couple of their highlight drill sections, they got 1.17 grams per ton gold over 48 meters in hole 1, and a spectacular 3.46 grams per ton gold over 50 meters in hole number 3. The mineralization was hosted in a polylithic breccia with up to 2% disseminated pyrite in the matrix. And I've seen a picture of some of this core, and it's intriguing, the look of the breccia, particularly because this property is a short distance away from Casino. Casino, of course, is a porphyry copper, but a lot of the mineralization at Casino is in a marginal breccia on the margins of the intrusion. So it'd be interesting to know if at Betty they have that intrusion that's causing that brecciation and mineralization. At Ryan Surprise and Uli's Ridge, Ryan Surprise drill highlights, hole 26 and 20 and 19 all had multiple intercepts. Hole 26 had 10.36 grams over 3.25. Also a 2.07 over 3.4 and a 2.09 over 5.5 meters. Hole 20 had 3.6 over 6 meters, a 1.6 over 25.5, and hole 19 had a 1.8 gram per ton gold over 15 and a 1.57 over 4.9. At Uli's Ridge, the RAB drilling, they got 4.67 grams per ton gold over 6 meters, a 1.35 over 21. And then hole number 9 had multiple intercepts of a 4.43 over 1.52, 1.53 grams per ton gold over 4.57, and a 2.26 grams per ton gold over 9.14. We'll now move into the free gold district. Triumph Gold, active again this year, 19 holes, 6,615 meters of drilling. They also did soil geochemical surveying and ground geophysics. The company also contracted Minerva Intelligence to conduct an AI study on the revenue and nucleus area to aid in targeting for new occurrences. Just a couple of their highlights from the drilling. At the WOW zone breccia, they got 1.52 grams per ton gold, 3.74% grams per ton, 3.74 grams per ton silver, a 0.18% copper, 0.011% moly over 80.5 meters. And at the Blue Sky zone, they got 0.27 grams per ton gold, 5.43 grams per ton silver, a 0.22% copper, 0.14% moly over 106.5 meters. A little bit to the south, Rockhaven Resources, busy again at the Claza deposit. Of course, Claza has a resource. The last calculation was in 2018, shown here. They drilled 72 holes this year, 14,256 meters. They were targeting expansion of the resource at the Claza deposit, as well as proximal targets at the Rusk, Kelly Porphyry, Western BRX extension, and Western Chevron zone. They were also using the drilling for metallurgical test work, and permitting related studies were also conducted. A few of the highlights there from the central BRX zone. They got 1.37 grams per ton gold, 79 grams per ton silver, 1.2% lead, 0.8% zinc over 13 meters in hole 509, and a 13.5 gram per ton gold, 111 grams per ton silver, 0.7% lead, and 1.2% zinc over 0.81 meters in hole 511. In the central Claza zone, they got 1.55 grams per ton gold, 10 grams silver, 0.1% lead, 0.3% zinc over 10.05 meters. At the Western BRX extension, they got 1,160 grams per ton silver and 8.4% lead with 5.2% zinc over just over half a meter in hole 492. And then at Western Chevron, 2.69 grams per ton gold, 171 grams per ton silver, 2.1% lead, 4.4% zinc over 0.87 meters. Moving to the far southeast Yukon, Strata Bound Minerals Corp was active again at the Golden Culvert property. They focused this year on soil sampling in the northern parts of that property, and they collected 1,574 soil samples at the Little Highland North and Rubis portions of the Golden Culvert. And those results are shown here. Hopefully you can see that the mineralized trend from the main Golden Culvert original discovery, which is at the south, continues right through to the north with a few breaks in there, but there's a defined structure that seems to be well mineralized. We'll now look at some silver, lead, and zinc exploration projects in the territory. 18 of those we're tracking, and that represents about 25% of Yukon's exploration activity. Starting with Fireweed Zinc's Mac Pass project. Of course, the resource at the Tom and Jason is just over 50 million tons of 6% zinc, almost 3% lead, and 34 grams per ton silver. They drilled 13 diamond drill holes for 3,850 meters this year, primarily testing the Boundary West discovery, but they also did a few holes at Tom East and Jason South. They also did a ground gravity survey and soil geochemical survey. Highlights from the boundary zone, all 10 holes intersected mineralization, including 7.71% zinc, 0.7 lead, and 32 grams per ton silver over 47 meters, basically. They also got some significant copper mineralization in hole number 5, 1.54% copper, 5.4% zinc, 0.04 lead, 5 grams silver over 2 meters in hole 5. And then hole 2 had 23.77% zinc, 3.44% lead, 75 grams per ton silver over 10.42 meters. Going back to the north of the Keno area, Cantex Mine Development active again at North Rakla. They drilled 32 diamond drill holes for 11,263 meters. The program has extended the strike length of the main zone mineralization to 2.1 kilometers, as shown on the map. They also worked on some regional targets outside of this map area, some with very significant copper mineralization in their extensive land package. Drill highlights from the discovery sector, so the northeastern portion of the main zone. They got an intercept of 6.06% lead, 9.48 zinc over and 43.37 grams per ton silver over 4.8 meters in hole 186. And in the central sector, they intercepted 6.17% combined lead zinc, 36.8 grams per ton silver, and 0.49% copper. They also had 3.58% manganese in that hole, and that was over 3.5 meters. A little bit to the west of the Rackla North is the Blend deposit of Blend Silver Corp. Resources at Blend. They updated the resource this year, and the new resource is indicated 4.6 million tons of 1.82% zinc, 1.63% lead, and 30 grams per ton silver, and an inferred 44.2 million tons of 1.83 zinc, 1.62 lead, and 27 grams silver. They drilled 3 diamond drill holes for metallurgical and resource expansion purposes. Results from that are pending. They also did 3D IP survey on the property and camp upgrades to support future exploration activities. This map is a little busy. It's the Keno district. Metallic Minerals was busy in the area again this year. The orange dots are deposits with historic production. The yellow dots are recent discoveries, current resources, and current mining activity of Alexco's operations. And the red dots, the red writing and the red circles are areas that Metallic has been focusing on. They drilled 43 holes this year for 4,500 meters of RC drilling, 8 holes for 1,900 meters of diamond drilling. They also did IP surveying, surface sampling, stratigraphic and structural mapping. And results from that work are pending. A little bit further west of Keno, Alianza Minerals was active at Mount Haldane. They had a relatively early season drill program. They drilled 6 holes for 1,576 meters, targeting the West Fault target. Those holes are shown on the map here. And some highlights of that program were very, very good silver numbers, comparable to what you see at the Keno mine site. 3,267 grams per ton silver, 5.8% lead, 7% zinc over 2.1 meters in hole 24, 363 grams of silver, 1.73 lead, 2.8 zinc over 6.83 meters in hole 25, and a 205 gram silver, 1.2 lead, 3.13% zinc over 5 meters in hole 26. Moving back to the southern Yukon, CMC Minerals was active at the Silverheart property this year. They drilled 19 holes for 2,100 meters. They also did a SkyTem geophysical survey and soil geochemical survey. Highlights from their drilling on the TM vein were 295 grams per ton silver, 0.1% lead, 0.57 zinc over 8.6 meters in hole 31, and a spectacular 3,590 grams per ton silver, 0.66 copper, 6.6% lead, and 32.9% zinc over 2.5 meters in hole 33. We'll now look at some copper exploration projects throughout the territory, representing 15% of Yukon's exploration activity. You can see the orange dots on this map, primarily focusing activity in the Dawson Range, but also a little bit south and in and around Whitehorse. Granite Creek Copper, working the Carmex Copper Project. Their 2021 program consisted of 7,742 meters of diamond drilling in 23 holes, 1,500 meters of RC drilling in 17 holes, and an IP geophysical survey. The company updated the mine plan and the metallurgical study on sulfide mineralization returned recoveries of 95% copper into a 25% copper con. They're looking at tank leaching for both the copper and gold oxide ore, and they would go to a conventional flotation for sulfide ore. Their mining method they're considering is underground sublevel block cave, and they've contracted SGS to prepare an updated resource estimate. Highlights, just took 1 hole from each of the 3 of the zones listed here. So zone 1, which is the main deposit area on the part of this map. One of the intercepts there, hole number 4, had 1.12% copper, 0.028% moly, 0.2 grams per ton gold, and 3.41 grams per ton silver over 43.5 meters. Zone 2000 South, which is in the central area, hole 11 intersected 0.96% copper, 0.013% moly, 0.18 grams per ton gold, and 4 grams per ton silver over 105 meters. Very nice width on that intercept. And then at zone 13, hole 21 intercepted 0.62% copper, 0.14 moly, 0.2 grams gold, and 3 grams silver over 96.85 meters. The Hopper property, CAVU Mining Corp optioned it from Strategic Metals earlier this year, and then they proceeded to drill 6 holes for 1,119 meters. They focused their drilling on 2 areas, the Copper Castle Skarn, which is on the north part of the map, and the Central Porphyry Zone, which is on the north side of the map. At Copper Castle, they got 1.4% copper, 0.53 grams per ton gold, and 11 grams silver over 22 meters in hole 1. 1.36% copper, 0.48 grams gold, and 9.6 grams silver over 10.96 meters in hole 3. The Central Porphyry Zone is I believe, a relatively new discovery on their part. They're seeing porphyry-style copper mineralization. The core in the bottom right is an example of that, and you might be able to see the intrusive and what looks like porphyry-style alteration of that. They only drilled 1 hole there this year, hole number 6, and these 3 intercepts are all from that hole. So they got 0.209% copper, 0.024 grams per ton gold, 1.3 grams silver, 48 ppm moly over 116 meters. And that's from 0 to 116. As well, further down hole, they got a 0.31% copper, 0.012 grams gold, 2.9 grams silver, and 27 ppm moly over 8.77 meters, and that was at 178 meters. And then further down, another intercept of 0.228% copper, 0.033 grams gold, 1.8 grams silver, and 130 ppm moly over 7.65 meters. Strategic Metals, very active in the territory again this year, worked a number of properties. These, I'll go through these 3, but they also worked a few other properties as well. Alada, located about 30 kilometers south of Casino in the Dawson Range. Nikki and Mint are in the Kluane ultramafic belt, but they're porphyry targets as well. At Alada, they did soil sampling and prospecting, and they defined a copper gold molybdenum soil anomaly that measures 4.2 kilometers in an east-west direction by 1.5 kilometers. The dot plot here shows copper in soils, and the underlying image is airborne mag that shows a distinct mag low underlying the anomalous copper area. They also collected 1 rock sample that returned 8.73 grams per ton gold. At their Nikki property, they did geological mapping and soil sampling. The soil sampling identified a zone, an anomalous trend that's 2 kilometers by 1.1 kilometers with copper and soil values up to 3,060. The image on the left is the mag for that area, and the image on the right is a dot plot of the copper in soils. And you can see the anomalous copper trend coincident with the mag high. And then at Mint, they did geological mapping and prospecting, and highlights there are rock samples, a rock sample that returned 2.3% copper, 1.365 grams per ton gold, and 32 grams silver, and 0.337 moly. To me, that looks like a porphyry signature. Going back up west of to Dawson area to the west near the border, Attack Resources was active at the Connaught property again this year. They conducted soil sampling, mapping, ground mag, induced polarization surveys, trenching, and a relogging of and sampling of historic drill core. We spent a little bit of time on the property there. Connaught has had some historic mining of silver, lead, zinc veins way back in the day, and Attack is looking at it for its porphyry potential. And it's very interesting. We spent some time in the trenches with Adam, and we saw lots of malachite mineralization. So I think they might be onto something there. Very interesting results. They got a rock sample from a trench that returned 1.38% copper. Trench 21E returned 724 ppm copper and 139 ppm moly over 85 meters. and 8 of their trenches within a 400 by 200 meter area returned greater than 325 ppm copper over lengths ranging from 75 to 108 meters. Almost done. We'll now look at a few other commodities in the territory. There were 2 tin exploration projects located in the Clear Creek area, the Bix and the Ollie, and those both belong to Strategic Metals. They did small programs on both of those. And then down in Southwest Yukon, 2 projects focusing on magmatic nickel copper PGE. One is at the former the Wellgreen project or nickel shop, and the other is a catalyst project of Group 10 Minerals. We'll just look at results from Nickel Creek's Nickel Shaw project. Of course, the resource there is a huge deposit, 431 million tons, containing 2.6 billion pounds of nickel, 1.5 billion pounds of copper, 145 million pounds of cobalt, 3.5 million ounces of platinum. They also have 3.6 million ounces of palladium and 0.6 million ounces of gold. That will go a long way to supplying the EV market. This year, they drilled 12 holes for 1,257 meters, focusing on the Arch and Burwash targets. And those are on either side of the Nickel Shaw deposit. And highlights from that work, at Arch, they drilled 6 holes, 5 of which intersected significant nickel copper mineralization, including, I'll just list one here. Hole number 4 had 1.4% nickel, 0.55% copper, 0.02% cobalt, 0.91 grams platinum, 1.46 palladium, and 0.12 grams gold over almost 12 meters. And then the 3 holes that were drilled at Burwash failed to intersect anything greater than 0.3% nickel. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Scott, for that very extensive Yukon exploration and mining overview for 2021. Now I'd like to introduce our next talk, Jeff Bond, Head Surficial Geology. We'll do a talk on the Yukon placer mining overview for 2021.
All right, thanks, Brianne. I'm just gonna get things launched here. There we go. How does that look? Got the right screen shared here, hopefully. Just gonna move things out of the way. All right, welcome everybody and good morning to the audience. Nice to see everybody tuning in, and thanks to the Chamber of Mines for the opportunity to present the Yukon Placer Industry 2021 overview talk. The climate for mining. So Dawson City, there was, as anybody who worked in the Yukon throughout part of the summer would have experienced the heat wave that we had. There was a huge heat wave from June 7th to August 6th. The average temperature was 24.8 degrees Celsius and only 33 millimeters of precipitation over that 2-month period, which, you know, it can be a bit challenging for the mining industry. And there was 12 days above 28 degrees Celsius this year. Compare that to 2020, it was considered, well, similar. It wasn't that much warmer really, but the overall precipitation was a lot less. 153 millimeters of precipitation last year during that same 2-month period. Okay, so the industry had a good year this year, slightly down from 2020, but really still above average. 79,855 crude ounces have been reported. A few more ounces came in the new year for a total of $143 million Canadian. And the bulk of that production still is, of course, coming from the unglaciated regions, the Indian River, the Klondike River, West Yukon, Lower Stewart. But we're also seeing that the Lower Stewart, or sorry, the Clear Creek and Mayo area, the glaciated areas are starting to pick up and produce more and more gold. Okay, so the total placer production going back into the 1880s, there's been over 17.6 million crude ounces produced in the territory since the gold rush. 3.7 million ounces have been produced since 1978, when we started keeping more accurate and production records according to export tax reporting. This is a graph showing the placer gold production in the bars, the blue bars, and the inflation adjusted gold price in the yellow line. So we can see the spike from 1971 to 2021. So we can see the spike in the late 70s, early 80s with the gold price going up. We see the initiation of sort of the modern mining period after that, taking hold, and good production through the 80s and into the early 90s, and the gold price starts to affect production at that point in time. But really, that initial high price of gold in 1980, 81 was fairly short-lived compared to the modern swing that we've seen in recent times. So it's interesting. We're not getting the same amount of gold produced for sure compared to like 1991. We had over 160, or 1989 we had 160,000 ounces produced by the placer industry. That's really related to just sort of overall options in terms of lower grades of ground being available to mine. Okay, so I'm going to go into some regional district production highlights. So the Indian River is one of the cornerstones of the placer industry in the Yukon. The Indian River itself has produced over 14,000 ounces this year. Produced 14,000 ounces. It's slightly down from last year. Good production from Dominion Sulphur and Wounded Moose this year. And we're also seeing a little bit of production from Australia as well, which is interesting. And I'll get into why that is in the next few slides here. On the lower Indian River, Slate River Mining was busy again. They are mining sort of just on the margins of the floodplain of the Indian River. It's a 2 to 3 person operation each year. They mine about 3 feet of bedrock and 3 to 4 feet of river gravel. It's a highly efficient operation. They use excavator mounted conveyors to remove the overburden at these sites and stack it very near to their cuts. It makes for very efficient mining and really, really good, exceptional reclamation at the mine site. Northern Exposure was active again. They're mining just below the mouth of Quartz Creek in the Indian River Valley. And this is an area that was disturbed heavily during the 1980s. And high graded during the 1980s. So to find ground in this area, you're really looking underneath old tailings and stripping piles, which can be challenging. They use air photos to understand sort of the activities from the 1980s a little more clearly. And then they can target areas to open up underneath these stripped areas, or these areas that have been covered by strippings, and find more ground. They had 15 people employed this year, and the pay varies from about 1 to 8 feet thick, depending if there's been some previous workings in the specific area. This was the largest piece of gold that they've ever recovered on this property. It's not that big, just under 2 centimeters in width there. But it must indicate some local. It's got some rougher edges. It must indicate some local veins in the area that are producing the odd nugget. Schmidt Mining continued stripping on Quartz Creek. This is a really big stripping operation. They're not sluicing on the property right now. They're just preparing the ground. They had 4,500 feet in length stripped or working on being stripped this year. It's 250 feet wide at the south end, 500 feet wide at the north end. 6 people are employed throughout the summer stripping the ground. This is on the Quartz Creek bench. This is a white channel deposit. And they've previously produced off of this. It's a very, very wide pay streak on the bench. And there's about an 8 foot thick sluice section, 3 meters thick sluice section at the base of the white channel section. You can see here in the photograph on the left. Its overall thickness of the deposit is about 24 meters or 78 feet in total thickness. So they'll be bringing the sluice plant back from Clear Creek area over to this area in the next year or two to begin processing this ground. All kinds of old timer workings are being exposed as well. Fine Gold Resources, they've got claims predominantly in the Eureka Creek drainage as well as in the Indian River Valley. both upstream and downstream from the mouth of Eureka Creek. They had 3 cuts this year in the Eureka Creek Valley, 2 on the right limit valley bottom. One of those is shown here on the left-hand side of your screen. And they also had 1 cut in the left limit deep bench deposit. So in the right limit, you can see here, there's a considerable amount of muck overburden, about 10 meters of muck in this particular location, which is close to a little tributary coming in. So you're going to get a little bit more overburden. And there's 4 meters of Eureka Creek gravel at the base of the section there that it's got the gold in it, of course. The shot on your right is an example of some of the reclamation completed also on the right limit, just downstream from that cut. And they're doing a nice job of contouring some of the old piles and top coating with organics. They were also active on the Indian River drainage itself. They had a couple plants running there this year, primarily targeting the Indian River gravel on the left limit side of the valley. Big discovery there in my mind this year, they uncovered an exposed white channel gravel. This is the first time I've really seen white channel gravel on the left, on the upper parts of the Indian River. You see it in the lower parts near the mouth, but haven't noticed it in the bench deposits on the upper parts of the Indian River. And so that really helps explain a lot. They've had some really good values in the river gravels as they've been mining towards the left limit harder and harder. They've had really good values, and then all of a sudden they intersecting this white channel gravel. So you would assume that the river has been reworking this white channel gravel pay streak. So this is a shot of where the star shows where they were mining at the airport cut this year, just upstream from the mouth of Eureka Creek. This is a view looking west down the Indian River Valley. This would be a hypothetical sort of map of the distribution of the white channel gravel in that area. So they're just kind of mining to the south there and starting to rub up against the white channel gravel. This is a cross section from one of the cuts showing the white channel gravel on the left-hand side of the screen, and the Indian River gravel on the right-hand side overlain by muck. And gives you can see that old former bank of the white channel gravel that would have been exposed at one time as the river was cutting into that edge. So we don't know much about the white channel gravel in this area in particular. It's not as quartz rich as in Bonanza. It's about 50% quartz here, still fairly high. And it's certainly, we did some panning at the base of it and you get some nice gold off the bedrock contact. It's about 14 meters thick where they exposed it, likely gets thicker into the bank. And interestingly, it's only about 15 meters above the valley bottom of the Indian River further out in the valley. So it's not a high bench like you see on Bonanza Creek. What's most exciting is the trend of this deposit, and it's heading right. This is a view of Upper Indian looking up into Australia. This is a sort of a hypothetical distribution of this white channel gravel with a pay streak in yellow shown here with question marks on it, of course. You know, how much of this is still contained in the bench deposits, how much has been reworked by the modern stream is an unknown right now. And it's a pretty exciting play. And it could add a lot of resources to this particular part of the drainage. Credits and hats off to Bill Harris for believing in Australia Creek and Lower Australia Creek in particular here, where they've begun some stripping this year. They've teaming up with some local operators in the area to mine this ground next year. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of grades come out of Australia Creek moving forward. Up on Dominion Creek, not too far away, NBC Contracting had leased some ground off of Jimlex, and this was they also did some exploration. This was YMIP funded program. They sluiced over 200,000 cubic yards as well, and had a good season there. This shows you some of the gold that they get out of Dominion Creek there. Again, looks very, very local. There's quartz veins exposed in the cut in the foreground. Favron Enterprises had primarily focused on 2 cuts on Sulphur Creek this year. Last year, they intersected some virgin ground underneath the dredge tailings on Sulphur Creek, which got them pretty excited. They had, 2 to 4 feet of pay preserved underneath the dredge tailings. So this year, they went ahead and did some sonic drilling in that local area to identify a cut. So that was cut number 1. They found upwards of 4 feet of virgin gravel underneath the Sulphur Creek dredge tailings. So that's pretty exciting. They also completed cut number 2, which was outside the dredge limits. So this would have been virgin ground that's mostly underneath some muck deposits. They sluiced 180,000 cubic yards this year. Okay, moving over to the Klondike River drainages. Much of the production in this area is dominated from White Channel gravel deposits, and Paradise gravel as well, from Paradise Hill, Lovett Hill, for example, and Chichaco Hill. This is an example of Paradise Hill, the Paradise Hill cut this year. This is Tony Beats's ground. The Paradise gravel is shown on the left-hand side of the screen, and this is a paleosol. This oxidation horizon is a paleosol on the top of the Paradise gravel. This is a pre-White Channel gravel deposit. It has about 25% quartz in it, and they've produced over 5,000 ounces from this gravel this year. There's about 2 meters of White Channel gravel overlying the Paradise gravel in this particular area. Ross Saylor was busy again on Hunker Creek, and he's mining right where Last Chance Creek comes into Hunker. So just upstream from the Last Chance Creek, the mouth of that creek. Anyways, he is mining a series of left limit benches. The old timers had been in there previously. It's overlain by a silty sort of muck, and there's plenty of gravel and gold left in that area. It also had a really interesting bedrock exposed in that cut this year. There was the Carmex volcanic unit exposed, shown here on the photograph on the left, which is up near where Sydney's standing, and it flowed out over top of a laminated silt deposits. This is 72 million years ago, and you resulted in these injection features from an underlying gravel that was exposed there. And if you get a close-up view, you can see pebbles within this injection feature. So there's, the valley bottom 72 million years ago was in pretty much the exact same place as it is today, speaking to some of the antiquity of this landscape. There was 4 people employed at this operation this year, and they sluiced about 150 yards per hour. Marty Knutson had a cut on the Klondike River just near the mouth of Hunker Creek. So in the section, you're seeing about anywhere from 3 to 6 meters of muck overlying 4 meters of Hunker Creek gravel, and underlying that is about 3.7 meters or 4 meters of Klondike River gravel. This is a coarser gravel. There's not much gold in the Hunker Creek gravel. It's stripped right off, and all the production is from the Klondike River gravel on the bedrock contact. There's 6 people employed at this mining operation, and they sluice 120 yards per hour. Northern Shoveler at Lovett Hill. This is the big White Channel deposit at the mouth of Bonanza Creek. They increased their staff up to 20 this year from last year. I believe there was something like 16 or less, or I think maybe even 10 people in 2020. So they had about 20 staff this year. They really stepped it up. They're primarily using Hitachi 1100s here for stripping. It's a big stripping game. You have 48 meters of White Channel gravel overlain by 24 meters of Klondike wash, the Klondike River gravel, and you got to get down to that sort of 5-meter section at the bottom for your sluice deposit. This is a shot here on the right of Heather Clark, one of our students this summer, putting her hand on the White Channel gravel, Klondike River gravel contact in the sort of middle part of the section. This is this marks the first glaciation in the Yukon 2.6 million years ago. So if we look at the what they're starting to do at Jackson and Lovett Hills, is they're stripping the upper parts of the deposit now, starting to thaw permafrost. One of the big unknowns is how much permafrost is actually there as you mine through the old Bonanza Creek channel here through the hill. You're going to encounter more and more permafrost, and that needs to be taken into account. And underground workings, we can overlay a rubber sheeted sort of older map from the 1940s that YCGC put together that documents underground workings on the hill. Much of those workings are on the south side of the hill, and they've been mining through those in recent years. And as you get into the middle parts of the hill, there's less and less. And of course, there's some modern workings on the north side of the hill that they're already aware of. But the middle part of the hill seems to be untouched by old timer workings, which is still an unknown, but is important consideration. All right, Joe McIntyre was operating under Coleman Explorations Limited this season on Bonanza Creek. This is a shot looking back towards Lovett Hill in the distance on the right limit of Bonanza Creek. And you can still find corners of virgin ground in Bonanza Creek. And they found a 2 meter thick section here of Bonanza Creek gravel, very slabby. It was overlain by muck and colluviated weathered bedrock. The cut measured about 60 by 180 feet thick, but it's nice to see that there's some virgin Bonanza gravel left in corners of Bonanza Creek still. Fellhawk Placers optioned ground off of Roland Berglund and Dan Trudeau this year on Bonanza Creek as well. Here they are at the base of Adams Hill. I've got the sonic drill rig identified there. That was a YMIT program this year as well. And what they're doing is looking for virgin Bonanza Creek gravel underlying hydraulic strippings or hydraulic tailings that came off the hill when they were hydraulic mining the hill. So they're drilling right up sort of tight to the hillside. And you can see this is a paleo channel map that McConnell published back in 1905, I believe, or 1907. Showing the pay streak of the white channel gravel. The star shows where they were drilling this year in the middle part of the photograph here, and the pay streak nearby. So really they're just trying to target the base of the hillside up, on the modern floodplain underneath these hydraulic tailings. And you can use some of the historic data that's been compiled by the Yukon Geological Survey. This has been Sidney Van Loon's project for a number of years now. And all that is digitally available. And this is a map on the left showing the limit of dredging activity on this particular area of the ground. This is the shot of the drill rig here. And if you overlay the sort of where the dredge theoretically went and where the base of the hill perhaps lies, you're left with a sliver of ground here that may have been missed by dredging and could very well have some virgin Bonanza Creek gravel. So that was the main target for that project. Okay, moving over west of the Yukon River, this is into the 60-mile country. 60-mile river production really dominates here. This is M2 gold and Hawk mining primarily. Produced just under 5,000 ounces this year from that drainage. And production overall is down a little bit by about 1,200 ounces this year from 2020. 2020 was a banner year with the gold price being so high, so it's not surprising. But when we look at the production, not including the 60-mile river, we see that Bedrock Creek, 10-mile Creek in California, sort of the three of the main producing tributaries over there. K1 mining was active again on Bedrock Creek. This is a tributary, left limit tributary to the 60-mile river. And they sluiced about 500 hours this season from this gravel here shown on the left-hand side of your screen. It's a really slabby looking gravel with the occasional rounded quartz boulder in the deposit. If you've got these rounded quartz boulders in the gravel, you're likely in good gold, according to Mike. And if you don't see those rounded boulders, there's likely not so much. So it is spotty ground. As you mine along the left limit of the valley here, you can be in good ground, and then it can cut right off. And the reason for that If you're looking downstream in the drainage, this is primarily where they were mining this year, right down in this area here. There's a left limit bench here. And so, you know, part of the gold is partly hung up on that bench, and depending of whether or not it's been reworked into the valley bottom, you'll get sort of good ground or poor ground, depending on that sort of variable erosion of that terrace. Okay, Stewart River drainages. Henderson Creek, a really good year, over 5,000 ounces produced from Henderson this year. Strong production from Barker Creek as well. The overall production from the lower Stewart was 11,600 ounces in 2021, down a bit from 13,300 ounces in 2020. But we see a number of contributing drainages here. If we have a look at HC Mining Limited's operation on Henderson Creek, they had 2 cuts this year that were 1.5 kilometers in length, substantial length. They had 4 wash plants running. 2 of these SD 600 Macon plants, these can process 200 yards an hour each. So you're getting 400 yards an hour out of 2 of those suckers. And they noticed that as the, you know, in certain areas where the creek has, you know, comes up against the bench deposits, and you've got a tributary cutting the bench, you'll get, you know, the grades picking up. So there are contributions from the benches, and there certainly indicates that might be some gold left on the benches, which are largely unmined at this point in Lower Henderson Creek. Similarly, Stuart Placers on Black Hills Creek is experiencing similar kind of ground there. They are mining a 5 to 6 foot thick pebble cobble gravel in the middle of the valley. There are contributions, it seems, from some of the side tributaries in that area. They were mining just upstream from Kernine Creek this year, and they processed 100,000 cubic yards this year, and there was about 5 to 6 people employed throughout the season. Over on Kirkman Creek, Fellhawk Placers did a considerable amount of reclamation this year. They've mined for many, many years on Kirkman Creek, and now are touching up the ground that they previously mined. So there was a considerable effort put into top coating, hauling organics, contouring the ground, and facilitating revegetation. So it's great to see that, and they're starting to look at a sort of final channel construction for that for parts of Kirkman Creek. Schmidt Mining was mining on Barker Creek once again. This is Dave Prossi, who manages that particular operation. They shifted their operation down to the lower part of Barker Creek this year, where they mined a cut measuring 450,000 square feet. The ground averaged 12 to 14 feet in depth, so quite shallow. And there's a left limit bench, to be a Pliocene bench in that particular part of the valley. And they were noticing, again, grades were picking up as they sort of hugged up against the bench and where gullies cut the bench. So they're getting some gold off the bench, which has not been explored at all yet. Here's an example of the gold grain size, -4 to +12 mesh primarily. Okay, into the glaciated region here. This is a graph for Clear Creek in the Mayo districts. Clear Creek dropped from 10,300 ounces in 2020 to just over 7,500 ounces in 2021. And there was an increase in production from the Mayo district from 5,100 ounces to 6,356 ounces in 2021. We see strong production from Josephine Creek, Granite Creek, Clear Creek, and Big Creeks in this area. So the Clear Creek district has, this is left Clear Creek here, and the main stem of Clear Creek. These 2 drainages have produced over 150,000 ounces since the 1940s. On the opposite side of the West Ridge, the height of land is Big Creek and Josephine Creeks, where since 2019, 16,000 ounces has been produced. And that's really all that's been produced from those 2 drainages. So we see quite a difference in the amount of gold on either sides of West Ridge, despite, you know, the geology, the mineralization being sort of largely focused along the along the height of land there and spreading out from those intrusions. So there's a good potential for more gold on the eastern side of the height of land there. And there was also production for this year from Gem Creek, which we haven't seen since the 1990s. Working on a glacial limits map of this area right now, and this is just a sneak preview of what some of the different glacial limits look like for West Ridge, and the stars show where there was production this year, and the orange star is an exploration project from Lewis Gulch. So here's a view of the Josephine Creek operation by Schmidt Mining. This is fairly shallow ground. They mine 2 feet of bedrock. On the bedrock contact is a matrix supported till, alpine till that has the best gold in it. And then that's overlain by a coarse gravel that's about 5 feet thick. And they sluice that as well. And then they strip about 5 feet of finer gravel and organics. So there's about a 10-foot sluice section in here and 5 feet of stripping. So it's a quite shallow ground with a good stripping ratio. Schmidt Mining turned their attention to reclamation planning this year as well on Big Creek, where they've been mining fairly extensively in the last couple of years. They teamed up with EDI, Environmental Dynamics here in Whitehorse, with Pat Tobler and Pat, myself, and Stuart's grandson walked the ground this year and came up with a plan for reclamation. They've got quite a few ponds from previous cuts in the drainage that are now occupied by grayling. The grayling seem to be loving this particular environment, so we're trying to figure out how to incorporate this into the valley's sort of ecosystem moving forward. So Pat's was a great help in putting together these reclamation plans for Stuart, and we're looking forward to seeing the final product in the valley in the near future. Okay, over in Granite Creek, this is just south of Keno City. This is a picture of Jessie Steinke. She's a grad student of mine, working together with Brent Ward from Simon Fraser University, and she completed her field work on the placer deposits in Granite Creek this year. This is some of the team here working in Marcel Dulac's cut this summer. She's got a YEG paper coming out on the placer settings for Granite Creek, so look for that in towards the end of the month. This is an aerial photograph of the area. This shows where the cuts were in 2021, and this is Granite Creek here. You've got Elbert Creek coming in from the south, and Keystone Creek heading west. This area is glaciated by alpine glaciers and the Cordilleran ice sheet, so it's quite complex. The Cordilleran ice sheet came in from the east and advanced up the drainage, whereas you had alpine glaciers coming out of various cirques. There was a glacial lake in the pass area, which further confounds the geology and adds to some of the overburden in the area. This is Dulac Mining's cut from Granite Creek. And near that pass area this year, there's lake sediments in the upper part of the stratigraphy. They had eight employees this year. They mined, they had a 20-foot section of in the upper gravels that they sluiced, and there were lower grades in the underlying till, although they haven't gotten to bedrock yet. So there's really a lot of variability in the sort of where the gold is lying in these deposits. Could be in upper gravels, not so much in some of the till, sometimes more in till, and you really have to do a fair bit of exploration, drilling, and testing to figure it out. Earth and Iron was operating very close by and had a very large cut this year. It was 80 by 130 meters in dimensions by 34 meters deep. They're getting gold starting at about the 17-meter level, so mid-section in an outwash gravel. And they also exposed a paleo channel of Granite Creek in the lower part of the stratigraphy shown right down in here, this orange gravel. And this is a really exciting deposit. It's likely from a previous warm period prior to the last glaciation, and the grades were pretty extraordinary in there. They're getting economic grades in the overlying outwash gravel, albeit it's less gold than the paleo channel, but there's a lot of volume to it. And then there's some gold in the underlying till below that as well. So there's it's a very, very thick sluice section, which adds to the economics of this ground. Moving up Granite Creek, this is Granite Creek Resources cut here, shown in this part of the valley. This is just below where some of the hard rock exploration was occurring this year, and this is Jim Davies' operation. Jim is kind of the primary placer claim holder in the area, and they're trying to, definitely trying to find some economic alpine till deposits in this particular area, and they did come into some decent gold. And just look how dendritic some of this is, very, very locally derived. I mean, the alpine glaciers were eroding very, very proximal gold veins in the valley bottom here. So this is pretty exciting for the hard rock opportunities here as well. Over on Duncan Creek, there was a major shift in ownership. Mel Zeiler's claims are now held by FTG Placers. These guys were formerly active in the Ruby Range, and this is Riley Gibson and Ed Long. And they were just getting familiar with the ground this year and moved all their equipment over from the Ruby Range and started poking away and made a discovery just around mid-season and got into an old channel of Duncan Creek, and we're pretty excited about it. So it's going to be really interesting to see how these guys figure out this complicated ground moving forward. Hyatt Creek, this is a tributary to Minto Creek and drains a Scheelite Dome in the Mayo area, just north of Mayo. We haven't seen much activity from Hyatt Creek in recent years, and certainly we haven't seen any activity from lower Hyatt Creek for some time. Merrill Powers optioned this ground to Craig Stepler this year. He went in there, sluiced 15,000 yards from an 8-meter section, and including a glacial fluvial gravel that's heading towards Minto Creek here. So he's on this bench ground, and it's looking really good. It's nice, convenient ground. It's high and dry, and it's really exciting to see some new activity on this drainage. Okay, just about finished here. This is the production from the Dawson Range in Kluwani this year. Most of that production is coming from Canadian Creek, and there was a little bit of production from Rabbit Creek. This is likely leftover gold from previous years, and then Nansen Creek and Gladstone Creek as well. Batavia Mining was active again on Upper Canadian Creek and on Patton Gulch. This is right below the Casino Porphyry, or right within the Casino Porphyry pretty much. And they are mining a low-level right limit bench on Canadian Creek. They sluiced about 80,000 cubic yards this year and had a crew of 4 employees. Here you can see a shot of the Patton Gulch here, where they were mining sort of right up into sort of the heart of the some of the hard rock ground in that area this year. Sean Ryan was exploring in that area as well, just a little bit to the east on Sunshine and Isaac Creek. So this is Ryanwood exploration. This is all heli-supported exploration, geophysics and drilling. And they do a really good job of keeping the footprint really, really light for the exploration work, so they're not disturbing ground unnecessarily. They drilled 61 holes on Sunshine Creek for just under 1,500 feet of drilling, and 10 holes on Isaac Creek for 390 feet of total drilling. They also were active on 20 Mile Creek, which is a trip to 60 Mile River, and on Henderson area claims. So they drilled 118 holes over on those 2 properties this year. Okay, just to close out, I wanted to tip my hat to Tatra Ventures. This is a little shot of their previous mining site on the Klondike River. This is just up near Bear Creek subdivision. They've been mining sort of a point bar of the Klondike River over the last few years, did quite well in this area. And he always had a dream of making a community swimming hole out of the site when he was finished. So this is just a few slides showing some of that work that they did. Once they finished mining, they sculpted the edges and they brought in, they made an island out in the middle of the pond. They brought in some fine sand to make a beach as well, just below the road access coming in. They also brought in some white channel gravel sand to make a white sand beach. The end product was extraordinary. And anybody that was up in Dawson this year for those hot days was seen here at the swimming hole. And this is a before and after pics. There was all kinds of people there this year enjoying this new feature for the community. And just wanted to say thanks to Marty for believing in his vision to create something for the community and doing something which is going to have a lasting effect on the well-being of folks on those hot days up there. So good job, Marty. And just to remind you that our 2018 to 2020 placer industry report has been released. Make sure you get your copy. You can drop by our office. We can mail you one out if you want, but feel free to come in and get them. It's also available online. I'd also like, on behalf of Sydney and I'd like to thank everybody for welcoming us onto your claims this summer, and we look forward to seeing you in 2022. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Jeff, for that Yukon placer mining overview for 2021. I would now like to introduce Rosie Cobbett, who's a project geologist with Yukon Geological Survey, and she's going to be doing a talk on the early Ordovician seamounts preserved in the Canadian Cordillera, implications for the rift history of Western Laurentia. Thank you, Rosie.
Thanks. Let's get this going. My talk really changes gears here. It's pretty technical, some rock photos in there and stuff. So hopefully everybody can switch their brain to follow this. So the title that I have here is a little bit different, but basically I'm gonna walk everyone through what we think are some early Ordovician seamounts preserved in the Yukon. And I'll give a little bit of background on the project first. It's a part of a PhD that I'm working on in a joint effort between the Yukon Geological Survey and Memorial University of Newfoundland. And the project has me going around the Yukon and Northwest Territories looking at early and middle Ordovician Paleozoic volcanic rocks exposed in Yukon and Northwest Territories. And this talk will just have a look at one of these areas and talk a little bit about some of the implications for what we know about the rift history of Western Laurentia, and also how it may implicate exploration in the area and in the Yukon in general. So the picture behind the words here is a really cool high alloclastite breccia. So this rock formed when hot lava hits cold seawater at the bottom of the ocean, and it basically quenches and shatters and sort of breaks apart and falls into itself. And you get these beautiful textures that comprise these angular clasts of basalt in a glassy matrix that's now devitrified. So that's what the photograph shows. And the area and the rocks we'll be talking about today, this is a huge volume of the rocks that make up the Menzie Creek Formation look like this. And it's pretty unique in terms of the volcanic rocks that are exposed in Yukon. And that's partly why we've tagged these as seamounts versus other types of volcanic eruptions. So we'll go way back out and look regionally at what's happening, and then we'll go back in and look at some more rock shots and the local map. So this is a terrain map of the Yukon. And I've just put in the legend at the top the units or the terrains that are sort of pertinent to the talk. So the biggest one being this dark blue or the medium blue color is the Selwyn Basin. So this area has North American associated rocks that have been shed from the craton onto the margin, sort of just after rifting. The lighter blue gray color, the NAP, is the same thing, North American derived rocks, but these are shallow water carbonates. And there's also this band, which isn't labeled, which is also shallow water carbonate rocks, which we call the McAvoy platform. Dark green is the Slide Mountain terrain, and the brown is the Yukon Tanana terrain. The symbols that I put up here, the green circles are significant mineral deposits, and I haven't subdivided them out, so some of them aren't really relevant to the talk, but other ones are. And I just put them there to show that in these North American derived or ancestral North American rocks, there are lots of mineral deposits. The red squares are areas that we have identified early Ordovician magmatic rocks, and I'll talk about exactly what age they are and the significance of the talk later, but I just threw them up there to show the distribution of them. So we will be looking today in central Yukon in the sort of southern Selwyn Basin here, but I just wanted to introduce the terrain map before I pull us into the local area. So this is a similar map which shows those two North American basin and platform rocks. And I just put that one there because I can add the polygon that shows the location. So the red shape is the map that's shown behind it. And this is just north of Faro, for those of you who know the Yukon. The map that I put together is a simplified geology map. And I'll just point out a few features and then move on. The thrust fault that's labeled here, the 2-peat fault, runs down through the middle of the map, and it separates early and middle Paleozoic rocks, mostly metamorphic and volcanic rocks, to the southwest from younger rocks to the north, shown in gray. And the talk really focuses on these green rocks, which are the Menzie Creek Formation. And we've subdivided the Menzie Creek Formation broadly into two groups. The dark green with the little V's are a basaltic rock package, so comprising mostly pillow basalts, basalt tubes, flows, and volcanogenic sediments derived from those basaltic rocks. The light green delineates a sill sediment complex, so gabbro sills that intrude calcareous siltstone, sandstones, and phylites, and they're extensively mapped over a huge area across the map. The cross section from A to A prime, which you see on the bottom, just shows the 2-peat fault there and how we think these basaltic rocks sit next to the sills. So in a lot of areas, we think the sills sit below the basaltic rocks, and sometimes they sit sort of beside it, but it's difficult to know for sure, but that's sort of our interpretation. Just briefly, we have 2 uranium lead zircon ages, and I just wanted to point out where those are from. We have the star you can't really see, but my cursor here, there's one sample from this circular green blob up here, and we also have another uranium lead age from down in the southeast part of the map. So I'll introduce the exact ages of those later, but I just wanted to point out where they're from. So stepping back out again, I just wanted to show in terms of in the continental margin stratigraphy where the Menzie Creek is thought to fit. This is a stratigraphic section starting in the west and south and moving across the Selwyn Basin into the Mackenzie platform as we move eastwards across the page. And the Menzie Creek Formation really sits in this blue unit, which we call the Rabbit Kettle Formation. So a Cambrian Ordovician limestone unit. And then it sits somewhere in between that Rabbit Kettle stuff and the Duo Lake, the Road River group in the gray. So right probably on the boundary, I would say. On this map, there's also conveniently plugged in here the Anvil district, which the Faro mine is part of. And that we believe sits right on the boundary between the Brown unit and the Rabbit Kettle. So Gull Lake and the Rabbit Kettle Formation. So sort of similar areas of the stratigraphy. And I'll show you later on the map that they're spatially associated with each other as well. And I'll just mention that because I'm going to get back to it later in the talk. Stepping back out again, the whole rifting event of Laurentia really has to do with the supercontinent Rodinia. So all of the continents on Earth were once assembled in a big supercontinent called Rodinia about 1 billion years ago. And as this broke apart, one of the major rifts that broke it apart included the western edge of Laurentia, where some of these blocks, this is just one person's interpretation of what those continental blocks would have been right beside Laurentia. And as things extend and rift apart, it left the western edge of Laurentia collecting sediments in a passive margin environment shown in this diagram. And this is just a nice Cordilleran-wide map showing those basin and platform deposits in blue and gray. And the colored dots there are places where we see magmatic rocks exposed within those sediments. And my project is just looking at some of those magmatic rock occurrences in the Yukon and Northwest Territories, and the Menzie Creek Formation is one of them. I've thrown this up just in case people have a hard time sort of visualizing what happens during rifting. We have extension of these cratons, and if you get enough extension, you actually break the crust in the lithosphere and you create a mid-ocean ridge. And so that happened. This is this is sort of what we thought North America might have looked like in the Ordovician. You have shallow water over most of the craton. The green is this passive margin, sort of a slope deposit, and then the darker green is deep ocean. And so we picture this being the North American craton. The crust has thinned and extended, collecting sediment from the North American craton, which is the Selwyn Basin stuff. And the Menzie Creek Formation is these little volcanoes that formed on the bottom of the ocean at that time. The rest of the diagram probably isn't super accurately drawn, but I just wanted to give people a cross-section visual of what would be happening where the Menzie Creek was deposited in the Ordovician. So going back into the Menzie Creek specifics, this is a stratigraphic section that I've put together for the two-peat hanging wall. So the stuff southwest of the two-peat, and that stuff's all thrust over top of younger rocks to the northeast. And the Menzie Creek Formation sits down here in the very early Ordovician between the Road River Group, like I mentioned, and actually locally what we call the Vangorda Formation, which is a metamorphic version of the Rabbit Kettle. So hopefully people are following all these names. But anyways, I've put the Rabbit Kettle here and the Gull Lake, which are the same names that are used in the earlier stratigraphy that I showed. And this is where the Menzie Creek Formation fits in. So when we were out there mapping, the basaltic facies labeled here with the same green color always formed prominent, big prominent peaks that have well-exposed bedrock, shown here in the background of this top photograph and in the bottom right photograph. And the sill sediment complex was a very heavily covered treed sections, which are all across the middle part of the upper photograph and shown here in the left. So that just kind of sets the stage for what kind of data we were able to collect from this stuff. So some of it was well exposed and some of it wasn't. The whole idea of the seamounts really came about when we put together some schematic stratigraphy through these basaltic piles, especially down in the southeast corner. We were able to walk all over that section, and we came up with this stratigraphic section, which shows a kilometer of stratigraphy. And it's almost all basaltic rocks, a few flows, which are shown in the black, tons of that high alloplastite breccia and pillow basalt breccia, and then tubes, so basalt tubes and basalt flows. And that's really typical of seamounts. We see big piles of these volcanic rocks with these same facies in modern seamounts that are sampled through different sort of robotic ocean floor crawler things. And what's also striking is that there's no interbedded sediments in here. And other places where you just get mid-ocean ridge volcanism or other types of volcanism, you typically have periods of magmatic quiescence, so there's no eruptions, and then the ocean floor sediments get deposited, and so you periodically have basaltic rocks and sediment, basaltic rocks and sediment, and we don't see that here. So we picture these things as seamounts, so they're rising up out of the ocean floor, basically these huge underwater volcanoes that everything sheds off them, so you never get sort of sediment deposited with the basaltic rocks. So those are the main lines of evidence for the seamounts. And the other line of evidence is that these sort of form conical features even today, even though there's been erosion and folding and faulting. You get these linear cones poking up along the margin, and that you can sort of even picture them now as being volcanoes. So anyways, we put together strat sections through all these different basaltic piles, in which you can see here. Main takeaway point is that you have lots of basalt breccia, little sediment. And here at Duo Creek, which is the seamount shown to the northwest, we interpret those sills sitting below the basaltic facies, similar to that cross section. I probably should have mentioned this first, but that you can read the definition of a seamount. Basically, there's these topographic features on the ocean floor, which are made of volcanic rocks. And some of the definitions say anything greater than 100 meters is the seamount, but we're really talking about these big underwater volcanoes that would be 1 kilometer to 5 kilometers in height. And all the sections here are a minimum thickness, because the top of all the mountains are you get basalt right up to the top. So there would have been some above, we don't know how much. So now just getting into the actual, what the rocks look like. We've divided the basaltic facies into 3 sort of facies associations. This is a coherent facies showing pillow basalts in the upper left photograph. There's a little hammer for scale you can barely see. So this is a big mountain of pillow basalt. If you look up close, the photograph top right shows what the pillows look like. And the pillow basalt that we mapped was really from about 10 centimeter scale pillows up to about 1 meter. Bottom left photograph shows a basalt tube. So a flat bottomed rounded top tube surrounded by basaltic breccia. And the bottom right photograph is a typical gabbro that comprised the sills that I talked about. And the diagram on the left I'll introduce now. It's a block diagram that's an interpretive diagram based on the sections that we measured. We put together what one of these, if you cut one of these seamounts down the middle, what they might look like. And you have sort of the purple represent magma vents, and you have flows moving out from there, which as you get away from the vent turn into pillow tube or basalt tubes, and then into pillow basalt as the flow rate sort of wanes away from the vent. And that's what I've tried to show in this diagram to the left. At the bottom, block diagram just shows potentially what the margin setting might have looked like. We have this downdropped graben, probably, yeah, whether it's a graben or just an off-shelf feature, hard to say, but you have these series of seamounts parallel to the graben where you've got the crust extending and decompression melting, forming these magmas at the bottom. And I won't get into it too much, but it's shown that when you have high sedimentation rates into a basin, you often get the magma erupting into the sediment as sills. And when you have low sedimentation rates into the basin, it typically forms surface eruptions. So one idea is that the seamounts really form maybe in the center of the graben where you're getting less sediment piling up, and the sills intrude in closer to the margins of the basin. There's not really any way to prove that, but it's one idea that sort of makes sense. Probably by volume, the most, the autoclastic facies of the basaltic rocks are probably by volume what we mostly map. And this is just a whole bunch of different kinds of basalt breccia, monomictic breccia, where you have basalt class, very angular, in a devitrified glassy basalt matrix. So that when I say devitrified glass, all this whitish material would have been glass that formed when seawater or the magma cooled really fast when it hit cold seawater. And then because the glass is unstable, after it forms, it devitrifies into chlorite and other minerals. The bottom right photograph is a little bit more unique. It's a pillow basalt breccia, and you can see the pillow rinds on some of these clasts, and the little sort of white rimmed clasts are from the rind of the pillow, and the clasts that don't have that are from the center of the pillow. So that's a really interesting rock that we found, where you can really see a pillow form, shatter, break apart, and fall back down and form these breccias. And lastly, we mapped a lot of volcaniclastic rocks, volcanogenic derived sandstones and conglomerates, and even some underwater or some fire fountains, which are an explosive eruption that happens underwater. So the top photograph is a thin section photograph showing what we think are one of these fire fountain deposits. And so it's sort of globular scoria and basalt classed in this glassy matrix, which would have just spattered out and fallen close to the vent. The bottom right photograph shows a folded but bedded volcanogenic conglomerate with this sandstone bed in between. And so the sorting of the clasts into these different fraction sizes sort of suggests a transport through the water. So these seamounts oversteepen and parts of them collapse, and all the clasts tumble down here, downhill, and they sort themselves on their way down and form these bedded volcaniclastics. And we picture that being deposited around the base as aprons around the base of these seamounts. So we see volcaniclastic rocks as well. And it's these volcaniclastic rocks where we managed to find zircon. We sent a lot of coarse grain, gabbro, and other breccias into the lab, but they never had any zircon. But we did get lucky with some of these volcaniclastic rocks. So the bottom right photograph shows a volcaniclastic siltstone and sandstone, and we sampled the coarsest beds in that package. The middle photograph is a thin section of that, and you can see the nice rounded grains of basalt in sort of a grungy matrix. In that sample, there were a few zircons, and they're all the same age, and they gave a nice weighted mean date of 484.38 MA. So very precise age. Another sample from the very northwest, which I pointed out, is shown in the left-hand photograph, and it's a volcanic breccia that has some little lithic clasts in it, a nice irregularly shaped scoria clast, so clearly not transported very far. And this sample also had a few zircons in it, and they all gave a weighted mean date of 484.20 MA. So the same age, 100 kilometers apart, and all the zircons in those samples are part of that age. So we interpret this to be the eruption age of the Menzies Creek Formation. Again, the samples, one from the farthest northwest seamount and one from the farthest southeast. So pretty strikingly good consistency with the data over that large area. So now kind of zooming back out, the two dates that I just showed you are the red squares in the northwest here. And this arrow roughly points at where the Faro deposits are, just outside the town of Faro, where they mined a SEDEX deposit there for many years. That is sort of has an unknown age on it. And so I'll get back to that in the next slide, but I just wanted to point out the other red squares, which are similar aged volcanic rocks that have been dated in the Yukon. The Matt Berry deposit, the other arrow here, we got an age from one of the volcanic rocks from drill core there, and it yielded an age of 486.69 MA. And that has been interpreted as an alkalic VMS deposit. So that sort of dates the mineralization to this early Ordovician age as well. So it's pretty interesting. Another similar aged rock is a rhyolite tuff that Lee Pigich dated down in southeast Yukon, resulted in an age of 491.02 MA. And then across the Tintina Fault in the Cassiar terrain, Luke Baronic and Roddy Campbell dated 3 different stocks and got somewhat similar ages, 488 and 487 and 472. And those weren't directly associated with any mineralization, but there are a lot of mineral occurrences in that area. And so overall, and I should have mentioned earlier, this terrain map, we've restored the Tintina Fault. So the Eocene dextral sites of fault, we've moved everything back so that it's a little bit more likely how things would have sat in the Ordovician. So you can kind of see there's this magmatic belt of rocks in the very early Ordovician popping up that follows the margin stratigraphy. So I won't talk too much about the Matt Berry deposit, except that it's thought to be this VMS deposit. And I'll go back to the Faro deposit because it's really interesting. It sits right by the Menzies Creek Formation, and a lot of people have always assumed they were associated. But I'll just talk a little bit about how that may or may not be the case. So the one thing that we know about the Faro deposit is it mineralizes part of the Mount Mai Formation and the Van Gorda Formation. So that sits right here on the stratigraphy where the red star is. The Menzies Creek Formation, especially now that we've done the detailed mapping and we have these age constraints on it, we really see, we can definitely say that the Menzies Creek Formation sits at the very top of the Van Gorda Formation and below the Road River Formation. And this has been confirmed by these detailed stratigraphic sections and stuff that we've done. And so we don't have fossil control for these, the Van Gorda and the Mount Mai, we don't have a lot of age constraints on the Rabbit Kettle Formation and the rest of the Selwyn Basin. So leaves some age questions for that stratigraphy, but no matter which way you look at it, the Faro deposit is older than the Menzie Creek Formation. So it's very difficult to call the Menzie Creek Formation the heat source for the Faro deposits, or link it sort of temporally to those SEDEX deposits, but it is in the same area, and it is in the same parts of the stratigraphy. So there's still some questions about its association with the mineralization and these seamounts. One thing that we can say is that it's likely they share a similar structural story. So the one thing that identifying these seamounts gives us is that they often, in other parts of the world, crop up along big major crustal structures. So this diagram on the bottom left is from the eastern part of Canada, and you can see Newfoundland, the island of Newfoundland here in dark gray. And this is offshore Newfoundland, which is very well imaged through geophysics and ocean floor bathymetry and some deep ocean drilling because of the oil there. And so they've identified a lot of seamounts, which are shown schematically in the top right diagram. But all the dark gray blobs you see here labeled Fogo seamounts form these linear patterns on the ocean floor. Similar here, you see the Newfoundland seamounts sort of align linearly, and the New England seamounts down at the bottom form these linear patterns. And in some cases, they've been able to link them with big crustal structures, or what they call here these different fracture zones. So the Pico fracture zone, for example. And up here, they show the dark black lines on the top right photograph are major crustal structures. And these seamounts very typically form parallel and along these features. So I think the one thing that we can say for sure is that the Menzie Creek Formation seamounts show an area where we probably had a deep crustal structure really early on in the history of Yukon geology. And the Two-Peat Fault may be reflected of one of those big structures that have been reactivated. And I think that, and these big structures could also be linked to the Faro mine, which would just be off the map to the southeast. So that is where I'm going to leave it today. And please ask questions if some of this stuff was confusing or you want any more information. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rosie. That's a lot of really great information there. We'd like to bring Jeff and Scott from YGS back on for the Q&A live session. Please, you're welcome to answer any questions. We will try to get to all of them. And thank you, Rosie, Jeff, and Scott.
You're welcome. That's a question for Scott.
Automated core logging and casino, were you able to describe how that, yeah. Okay, so from what I remember about the instrumentation, there were, and they're actually modifying it. We had a chat with those guys just before Christmas, and they're adding new instrumentation to that whole apparatus kind of continually. But there was, when the core goes on there, it's on a mechanized table that moves the core box around. I think the first sensor is a LiDAR. So that measures the surface of the core. And it doesn't matter whether the core is cut or uncut, fresh. And it also gives a separation from the other sensors to the top of the core, so that when the core passes underneath the other sensors, they can get right down to as close as possible to the core. So they do LiDAR, I think they do magnetic susceptibility, photogrammetry or photography, XRF scan of it. So they get real-time chemistry off of it. And there's one other there, it escapes me, but multispectral bands on it. There it is. Yeah. So yeah, it was great. And they do, I think they said they can do about 100 meters a day, 24-hour day, I think is about the rate of production on that. So it was very impressive. I jokingly mentioned that I could see geologists potentially being unemployed because of this, but in actuality, the operator said what happens is the geologists then work on the interpretation of all of those results coming out. encourage people who are interested in it, look to check out the Enersoft website. They've got some information on it there. We have been in discussions with them. They're looking to do another project in the Yukon, probably multiple projects. But we're looking, if the opportunity arises and we have the funding available, to get them to do some of our core from a variety of deposits that we have in the core library, and to get some signatures on that core. So hopefully that comes about this year or next, and it'll be available to you guys from the core library.
I'll answer the next one since it's
Maybe you can read it out there, Rosie.
Yeah, it says, have you seen any magma vents? Not directly, but we do see part of the problem with the Menzie Creek Formation is all the basaltic rocks are really heavily covered in lichen, which hampers finding these subtle features like magma vents. Because I picture a magma vent just looking like a basaltic dike cutting up through basaltic facies rocks. And so unless you had really nice exposures of the textures of all these rocks, it's difficult to find those things. But yeah, so no, not directly, but there are places where we see coherent fine grained basalt that's textureless, and those are places where you could put a vent, and they just sit in amongst all these basalt breccias basically that you see.
I have a question for you, Rosie. You mentioned that you don't see much sedimentation in the Menzie Creek. So there probably was not any volcanopause and an opportunity to create a VMS situation, but did you see any copper mineralization there, either sulfide or malachite or anything like that?
No, it's amazing. Not one place. You don't even see pyrite anywhere. It's amazingly barren, which I think maybe also speaks to the seamount story. Sounds
right. Like. Yeah. That is typical of seamounts, that they are barren.
I think so. Yeah. Actually, I shouldn't say. I don't know, but I think when you think of VMS, you never hear them associated with seamounts and vice versa, sort of. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, good point, Patrick. Yeah. So what about those spatter textures? Wouldn't those be vent proximal? And yes, the one photograph I showed of the sort of globular scoria class, if our interpretation is right, that those are an underwater explosive eruption, those would be deposited within 10 to 50 meters of a vent. So you could indirectly say there would be a vent underneath those. Yeah. From Craig Hart, are there any crustal or mantle xenoliths? And the answer is no. I did not identify any xenoliths. And from Carolyn, are there any dikes in the underlying road river sediments or maybe feeders? So the road river sediments actually sit above or interfinger with the edges of the seamount deposits. And we didn't identify any dikes. The places that you see intrusive rocks are all these sills, and there are some places that the sills are not totally concordant with bedding, so they'd be parts where the sills are cutting up through the sediment. But those are away from the basaltic facies rocks. You don't really see them associated very often. Does that answer your question, Carolyn? Anyways. And from Danielle, Rosie, have you seen any shards in thin section? I didn't look at a ton of thin sections of the high class-like breccias and stuff. And I mean, you can see shard-like clasts in the outcrops, but there was no like true glassy bubble wall shardy stuff in any of the stuff. But I wouldn't say it's not there. I didn't look at a ton of thin sections from those, because all my chemistry where I had thin sections from those samples, I tried to choose the coherent basalt and not the breccias. Yeah, the class of the basalt breccias are quite large, but again, with the lichen covering, I wouldn't say that there's no finer grain basaltic stuff there. I just didn't end up sampling it. Another question, the geochron ages showed in the map, sorry, it's moving around, are younging south to north. Do you expect the same thing in the Yukon with more data? Good question. I would say not necessarily, because I have uranium lead data from some rocks, from volcanic rocks north of Menzie Creek, and they're actually younger. They're 445, 453. So I don't think that there's a general young pattern with the ages yet that's popped out. They sort of seem a bit random.
I just wanted to make a note too. I mentioned putting out a glacial limits map for the Clear Creek area. I've been working on the early Pleistocene limits there and the sort of mid Pleistocene limits as well. And that's going to be a part of a YEG paper that's going to feature some of the stratigraphy from Big Creek and Josephine Creek. So I suspect I'll have all the answers to well, I'll have all the exposure I need after this summer. And waiting for one more summer of exposure before I put that story together. So I'm anticipating to get that out into a YEG paper a year from now.
I've got a question for you, Jeff. I always like to see your gold images in your presentation because it shows how real the mining is in the territory. What was the largest nugget you saw this year?
Well, probably the one I have on the first slide.
2 centimeter roughly?
Yeah, I think it was maybe even a little larger, probably, you know, a good ounce anyways, something like that. That was the largest. Certainly there is some chunky nuggets that come out of Granite Creek. A lot of the gold is not, you know, necessarily that chunky. There's a fair bit of fine gold too, but yeah, you get some decent pieces. Like I've seen wire gold like that kind of length, but as big as your finger, so more like a cable, and you know, with almost pristine textures. Yeah, so very, very little travel. So the valley bottoms are definitely holding some secrets there in terms of bedrock mineralization. There, you know, there's a lot of cover, but then there's like periodic windows for placer mining that really highlight I think the potential of that particular area, the valley bottom, for exploration.
Yeah. And you mentioned they're mining, like still mining on Bonanza. What generation of mining is it now going on Bonanza?
I don't know the number exactly, but
it just continues.
When you think about it, you know, you kind of like, when I think about generations, or I think of cycles or sort of episodes, you had your hand miners first, then you had your hydraulic miners come in second, and then you had the dredging companies third. And now you've got sort of your excavator miners fourth, you know. And so when you're going in as an excavator operator now, and you've got you've acquired some claims that have all these layers of production history on them. Yeah, you've got to think about all three of those preceding events, you know, in terms of you know what they did. And so historic photographs are super useful. And some of the historic maps that we're getting from National Archives have been very, very useful for helping decipher the history, especially the dredging history. But old photographs are incredible. You know, you get snapshots from 1914 showing sort of where a bunch of hand mining was occurring, or hydraulic mining, that you know, gives you an idea as to the timing of some of the hydraulic mining, which isn't always super obvious. I think there's another question for.
It's a last call for questions.
Oh, last call for questions. There's one from here. It says the one pit showed quartz veining exposed. I forget what creek. Do you know if it was sampled at all? And I believe that was Dominion Creek from NBC Contracting. And no, I don't believe it was sampled for assay, as far as I know. But we can ask Sid. Sydney visited that particular site. There's lots of situations where there's some pretty juicy looking bedrock exposed in placer mines that doesn't get sampled geochemically. You know, that's just a heads up to those people that have placer operators on their ground to keep an eye on those exposures and visit them regularly to see if you can get some insights.
I see we're getting a thank you to the sponsors. Brianne, looks like we're closing out. Did you have any final words to say, Brianne?
Thanks very much, Scott, Jeff, Rosie. Thank you also to Minister Streicker for joining us, and Laura Lee, YCM's president. And we hope that you all will join us in our coming sessions. Next one is on Thursday, January 13th. And we hope to see you all there. Once again, this session will be recorded, as will the other ones. If you'd like to have another look at our agenda, it is on our website, as well as the geoscience page.
Thanks for attending, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye. See ya.